Buster Olney, thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings, joins us every Thursday at 5:15. And Buster, Alex Rodriguez made history this week, but unlike last time, it was really quiet this time around, wasn't it?
Yeah, that really was interesting. That he sets an all-time American League record for one of the Triple Crown positions, an RBI, career RBI, and basically no one noticed. And I think it's going to be the same when he gets these last 18, 19, 20 hits before he hits 3,000, which really sort of speaks to sort of how people view him. And it was interesting, even on Twitter, where everything blows up yesterday. There really wasn't even that much conversation about that, and maybe it's because of the whole dispute between what's the actual statistic is and what's not the statistic, and as Babe Ruth should have more RBI than he's credited with. But either way, yeah, you're right. It goes back to the old question: if a tree falls in the forest, no one's around to hear it. Does it make a sound?
Buster, but when Barry Bonds was tearing up the record books, at least he got love at home. Is this a symbol that maybe, whatever it takes, it is time for A-Rod to just get out of New York?
I actually think the fans have been pretty good with him in New York. They've cheered him this year, but I'm fairly cynical about the reasons why. And I'll go back to what C.J. Wilson said about Josh Hamilton, and who obviously is a different set of circumstances than Alex does. But C.J. Wilson, when the Angels were sort of setting up to part ways with him, he said, you know what, if he was hitting, then they'd be keeping him, and it wouldn't be as much of a problem. And I think that's what's going on with Alex. I've seen, it written, well, everyone's cheering him. I'm like, yeah, that's because he's actually been good for them. He's been one of their better hitters, and he's getting some cheers. I just don't know how much awareness there was of that record, and it surprised me because I thought, especially as he got nearer to 2,000 career RBI, that there would be more talk about it because it really is an extraordinary record. I mean, since 1920, the only player with more career RBI than Alex Rodriguez is, Hank Aaron? That's pretty good company.
Buster Olney, thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings in Clifton Park with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. And Buster, last week we spoke about how wacky the Marlins managerial situation is. And this week you took it a step further by writing a column saying that the Marlins should explore the options of their next manager being Alex Rodriguez. What, Buster Olney?
I know, and when I sent out that article yesterday, I think 50% of the tweets I got back were, are you drunk? And the other half were, do you need a drug test? Look, when I first heard the idea, I was in a conversation with someone, and I first heard it, I thought, boy, there's no way. And then the more you think about it, the more you say, you know what, it could make sense. Now, it's obviously predicated on a couple things. One, that Alex, continues to handle himself the way that he has the last 4 months, where he's self-deprecating and he's, contrite and accountable, and also that he doesn't test positive again. And that, as far as we know, he's telling the truth. Because if you're Jeffrey Loria, the Marlins owner, you'd have to be comfortable with that. And let's face it, that Miami's probably the only market where this might even be in a realistic conversation at some point. But once you get past all that, and then you look at guys like Brad Ausmus, who's managing the Tigers and didn't have any managerial experience. Robin Ventura, same situation with the White Sox. Mike Matheny with the Cardinals. And you think about why those guys were hired. It's because they know baseball, and Alex knows baseball. They're diligent workers. No one's ever accused Alex of being a shirker. He's always put in a ton of work. And probably some of it is related to how they talk to young players. And I can tell you flat out that even people who don't like Alex have told me privately, he's great with young players. And he's from Miami. And let's face it, Miami's the city there. It's a little bit like Las Vegas to me, where there seems to be an easier forgiveness of what happened in the past. What you did before you got there doesn't seem to matter as much. And if you're Jeffrey Loria and you're looking for a splash, and we know that because he just hired a manager who had never managed before, you know what? Then who could be more interesting than Alex Rodriguez, the son of Miami?
Wow.
All right, well, Buster, you explained that well. Try to explain this one to me. The Yankees going through a historically bad streak. You had to go back to 07 and 95, but somehow they sweep the Royals?
Yeah, this is an absolutely true story. We had the game on Sunday night at the end of the Rangers wipeout of the Yankees over the weekend, and the Yankees played a terrible game. They finished up about 11:30 on Sunday night. The Royals, meanwhile, at that moment, clearly the best team in baseball, come rolling in New York about 8 o'clock that night. They get, have dinner. They're all all free and watching baseball or doing whatever they're doing by 10 o'clock that night. And the next day, as we're getting ready for the game, a couple of the producers of the game that was to start at 1 o'clock, I see them on the field, and one of them said to me, "You know what? If I could bet everything, including my children, I would do it on the Royals today." Because we saw how bad the Yankees looked, how great the Royals were. And the Yankees just looked tired. We didn't know if McCann was going to play. And then before the Royals register 4 outs, the Yankees are ahead 11-0. And I hear in my ear from the producer, "Well, my kids are gone."
That's awesome. Buster Olney of Booth. Thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. And Buster, we ask you this every single week. Now that the Yankees are third in all of baseball in home runs, we now more than ever really have no idea of what this team's identity is, do we?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And here's the thing. The same is being said in every city in the American League East. And I do radio once a week in Boston, and I feel like that every week I'm talking those guys off a ledge, okay? Where they're like, "Oh my God, this team is terrible and they can't get better." And I just keep on saying, "Are you seeing what's going on elsewhere?" The same applies with the Yankees. Their offense is very sporadic. They hit a lot of home runs, but who knows how healthy Mark Teixeira is going to be during the course of the summer at his age. Same with Alex Rodriguez. There are a lot of different parts of the team that aren't necessarily great, but the division's not that great. And you could say the same thing to people in Baltimore, where they got a lot of problems. But if you look around the division, maybe they have an opportunity. Maybe Toronto has an opportunity. I think the one team that probably is going to have the most difficult challenge would be the Rays. I don't think their ceiling is as high, 85 wins, whereas, the Red Sox, to me, are the team that probably has the best ability to fix problems in season. And the Yankees, we know, will make some sort of a deal before the trade deadline.
Is there a manager in all of baseball that would be more uncomfortable with living and dying by the home run than Joe Girardi?
Well, there's no question, he is a National League type manager at heart, but I also think that, he's kind of at the point where I just watching him, especially over the weekend when they were getting blown up by Texas, where you just got the sense he knows he's in for a long, arduous ride with this team, especially if they're not playing well defensively. And that, to me, is going to be what separates the Yankees from, being in playoff contention or not, because you guys have pointed out, they're going to hit some home runs. They're not going to hit for a high average. They're probably going to get great bullpen work. The rotation, is probably better than what people expect, but it's not great. The question is, are they going to live up to what we all thought in how, good defensively they are? I think as time goes on, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to think more of Didi Gregorius, instead of being a high-end shortstop like I'd heard from so many evaluators before the trade was made, as someone who can make mistakes because he's too aggressive. It seems like that he tries to do too much sometimes, and maybe that's a product of being in New York for the first time, being on a new team, but he just does, I don't want to use the word crazy stuff, but he just does stuff that he shouldn't try, like that, behind the back.
Glove.
Play that he tried on Saturday where you're like, geez, just underhand the ball in a regular way, just get it out.
Yeah, so there is concern there that he hasn't evened out yet, because we thought that he would calm down a little bit, but he's still rough out there, man.
He is. Now, I do think it's possible he just might be in a defensive slump, and I repeat, I've heard from a ton of people with other teams saying, you know what, we have questions about the bat, but we think he's a high-end shortstop. I'm beginning to wonder if that's a case of, a scout dropping in for 2 days, seeing him make some great plays, because the guy obviously has a ton of talent, seeing him make a couple great plays and walking away and saying this guy's a high-end shortstop, as opposed to seeing him every day for 2 months, which is what the Yankees have done here, and we're just seeing sort of these inconsistent mistakes just pop up. Often, more often than what we probably expected, given his history.
Right. Buster Olney, thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings in Clifton Park. With Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports, live at 5:15. The best of Buster today at 6:30. Buster, the emergence of Slade Heathcott on this team, does he fit in this lineup on a daily basis moving forward, or does he fit with the Yankees in the future?
Yeah, I think he's shown himself to be a natural fit as an outfielder on this team. And I, speculated today in the column about what's going on with the St. Louis Cardinals. They lost Matt Adams, their first baseman, to a quad injury, and it looks like he's going to be out, 3 to 4 months. And one of the possible suggestions I made for them to go get would be Garrett Jones of the Yankees, because let's face it, when Ellsbury comes back, and it sounds like it's going to be, maybe 2 or 3 more weeks before that happens, then you look at the composition of this team with Alex Rodriguez now locked in as the DH and having a good year and having shown himself to be able to do this for a couple months, and you just wonder if Garrett Jones would be a better, not as good of a fit as Slade is. Especially since, you can see he can play center field, he can play right field, he can play left field, he can run a little bit, he's got some pop. He's just more diverse in his range of skills than Garrett is, and I all along have thought Garrett would be a nice fit for Yankee Stadium, but he doesn't have a lot of value if he's not in the lineup against right-handed pitching, and he hasn't been doing that on a regular basis.
Buster, the other New York team, the Mets, having some injury issues. Now we're hearing about David Wright's spinal stenosis. Where does this leave the Mets, and where does this leave David Wright?
Well, I'll defer to my colleague Adam Ruman, who pointed out on the podcast that in the past, the Mets, when they've talked about this injury, they talked about, well, the MRI we're seeing shows no structural damage, when, in fact, stenosis is structural damage, and it is a structural concern. I think in some respects, and it may be that, this is going to be something where he can rehabilitate it and he'll be able to come back, and it's not that big of a deal, which is what the Mets are conveying right now. But I think it's a big deal for this reason. He's one of their few highly paid guys on this roster, and because of that, you need him to come back. Now, in some cases, if you had a guy in that situation, you'd almost want an absolutely clear picture of what his future is, even for the rest of this year, where you could say, okay, this guy's going to be out for 5 months, and that means we can free and clear go out in the trade market and address this need at third base. But they really can't do that, because we don't really know what David Wright is capable of for the rest of this year. And if that continues, that really leaves the Mets in a difficult spot, because I do think it's clear they need another hitter one way or another. And the longer that they don't know exactly what David Wright is going to be, then the tougher it is, I think, for the team to deal with this injury.
Buster Olney, thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings. Buster, your thoughts on the Mets deciding to go with the 6-man rotation till at least mid-August is what they're telling us right now, trying to limit Matt Harvey, one of the reasons why they're doing this. Your reaction to that move?
Well, it was surprising to me. Now, I don't obviously have all the information that, the Mets coaching staff and Terry Collins, the information that they have. Matt Harvey's not going to tell the media exactly how he feels, maybe the way that he would the training staff of the Mets. But from the outside looking in, it's a surprise to me, because I thought that the Mets this year would say, you know what, we know this about Matt Harvey. He's probably going to be a free agent in a few years. There's a good chance he's not going to re-sign with us. His agent, Scott Boras, and he just came back from Tommy John surgery, and so we're not going to abuse him. We're not going to send him out there for 130 pitches, and we're not going to pitch him 250 innings, but we are going to use him. And this seems to be a step back from that thinking that I was hearing during the course of the winter. Now, again, I think it's worth repeating. There may well be stuff that Matt is saying and other pitchers are saying to the coaching staff that we don't know about.
All right. Bryce Harper is simply amazing all of a sudden. 18 home runs, 6 to left, 6 to right, 6 to center. Jason Stark called him Ruthian. How would you classify his talent?
frightening and certainly not overrated. In spring training when the ESPN the magazine did that poll of players, and anonymously he was picked as the most overrated player in the game. And I think I told you guys this before, that when I was covering the Yankees in the late 90s, the player who would win that poll all the time was always Derek Jeter. And now you have a generation of players who are all wearing Derek Jeter's number. I tend to think less of that being a significant number of how many players think he's overrated. Here's the more significant number. Of all the hitters in the big leagues, the guy seeing the fewest percentage of strikes, as of Wednesday morning, 37% of pitches are strikes to him, 63% of pitches out of the strike zone. That tells you that opposing pitchers, they're scared to death of him. And the fact that they're not willing to pitch to him tells you a lot about how much respect that he's gotten in the game. And this week we've seen him, as you mentioned, with those opposite field home runs, because I'm sure that what's happened is that he's gotten off to this hot start. Pitchers are saying, you know what, I'm not going to throw it inside. So they start throwing it outside. Now he's doing damage on that too. That's pretty scary.
Buster, 2 pitchers in 1 week have become a topic with the substance on their arms. You've been very vocal that baseball should allow a certain amount of foreign substance. How likely do you see this actually happening, though?
I think that there's a high chance that they're going to alter rules or something regarding baseball. And I mentioned my solution would be, to have the pitchers check in with the umpires, because you guys watch games. Yeah. Every time you see a pitcher with a dark spot in the middle of their cap, that's probably pine tar, okay? When you see a pitcher with a shiny spot on their forearm, that's probably sunscreen. And as I mentioned last week, when those guys got busted, Will Smith and Brian Mattis, they were like the guys who were going 56 in the 55-mile-an-hour zone and just got their license suspended. It's ridiculous. Everyone knows that the vast majority of pitchers, in fact, one pitcher estimated 5 out of every 7 are doing it, and the hitters know what's going on. So why are all of a sudden, guys are getting busted? So I think that they can, have the pitchers check in with umpires, make sure they don't have too much volume. A couple pitchers in baseball tonight have mentioned maybe come up with some sort of a rag or something like a pine tar rag that you put out near the mound, and pitchers can use that, and that can be an improved substance. I think one thing is definitely going to change is the quality control of the baseballs, because I wrote the other day about how when you talk to people in the game, they say one of the problems is that you go from ballpark to ballpark and you're going to get 30 different sets of standards in terms of how well the balls are rubbed up when they're thrown out to the mound, because, in theory, an umpire should be rubbing up all these baseballs with the Delaware River mud, but in fact, it's usually left to a clubhouse attendant. And on top of that, I've had pitchers tell me stories about how they tipped the clubhouse kid an extra $20 to rub sunscreen directly into the ball.
Wow.
And that type of thing needs to get addressed so that you know that the balls are being properly prepared, and in the same way in each park, or else we're right back to Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Is there any truth to the rumor that the Boston Red Sox have hired McNally and Jastrzemski to?
There you go. Just put that one on a tee for you.
Yeah, you should have seen his eyes light up. He was excited about that one. Buster only thinks of Buffalo Wild Wings at Clifton Park every Thursday at 5:15. The best of Buster at 6:30. Buster, enjoy Anaheim. Got that West Coast game. The Angels going up against the Tigers on Sunday Night Baseball. We'll watch for it then, and looking forward to next week too, man.
See you guys.
All right, see you, Buster.
Later, Buster.